Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome to another interview for the Idea to Value podcast. I'm very happy to have with me again Paul Sloane. Paul is a prolific author on the subject of innovation. He's a bit of a social media influence with more than, I think, 40,000 Twitter followers now. And right. His most recent book is the third edition of the Leader's Guide to Lateral Thinking Skills. Paul, it's wonderful having you here.
Great to be with you, Nick.
So today we're going to be talking about this concept of leadership and what it means for innovation, what it means for thinking differently. So for people who don't know you or the work that you've done, can you give us a bit of an insight as to your thoughts around lateral thinking, which is where most people sort of got a taste of you?
Yes, so I write and speak on lateral thinking in business and how you can use the techniques of lateral thinking to drive creativity and business innovation. And it all comes down to leadership, really. What's preventing innovation in most organizations today is not a lack of ideas or a lack of money or resources. It's lack of leadership and courageous leadership. Leaders who are prepared to take risks, to back ideas, to place careful bets, and to do this in an intelligent way and to use some lateral thinking. The other day, there was a bee in my study here, and it was trying to get out. It could see the garden, and it wanted to get outside, and it flew against the window. And I opened a window nearby, but it wouldn't go there. It just kept pushing against the window, which was in front of it. And we're like that bee. Sometimes we just keep heading straight forward. We keep doing what we've done, what we know has worked in the past. We can see the goal ahead. We're pushing toward getting nowhere. And what we need to do is take a step backwards and sideways and try a different route.
And is that what you mean by lateral thinking?
Yes, lateral
in a
means
new way?
It's not pushing harder, it's being smarter, it's trying a different approach.
And that feeds into the very successful book that you're now writing, the newest edition of, The Leader's Guide to Lateral Thinking Skills.
Yeah, and here's a copy of it, The Leader's Guide to Lateral Thinking. It's hot off the press, just available this week in the UK. And in it, I advise leaders how to unlock the creativity in their team and how to drive innovation by using lateral thinking techniques. And those techniques involve challenging assumptions, asking questions, displacing yourself deliberately so that you're forced to take a different point of view, employing random inputs, all sorts of things like that in order to just move across from one window to another.
Now, one thing that I'm sure you get challenged on all the time is this concept of lateral thinking and puzzles. Are they just a new way to think of lots of new ideas? Or is it actually a different way of approaching things?
It's a different way of approaching things. And the puzzles, the techniques that you use in the puzzles, you can use for business problems as well. And I use them in my workshops, and we have a lot of fun with the puzzles. And people get frustrated and stuck, and they have to. It forces them to come at the problem from a new direction, and that's what's needed in business. And sometimes they're just funny stories. I heard this story about a man who went to see a psychiatrist, and he said to the psychiatrist, "Can you help me?" And the psychiatrist said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Well, I can't get to sleep at night because every night I'm worried there's somebody under the bed, and I have this irrational fear there's somebody under the bed, and I've had it ever since I was a child. Can you help me?" And the psychiatrist said, "Yes, I can. We'll have a series of sessions, and we'll go right back to your childhood, and we'll unpick the problem, and I'll solve it for you." And the man said, "How much will that cost?" And the psychiatrist said, "You'll need about 10 sessions, and they cost about £400 each." And the man said, "Okay, I'll think about it." And the psychiatrist saw him a few weeks later, and he said, "What happened? Are you going to come for the treatment?" And the man said, "No, I discussed it with my barber, and he came up with a solution that solved the problem." And the psychiatrist said, "That's incredible. What did he say?" And the man said, "He said, cut the legs off the bed. And then you know for sure there's nobody under it." And, there's a routine academic, theoretical solution to a problem as there was there, which might have worked. And there's also an entirely different hack. And this is literally a hack the legs off the bed. But often there's a different route which will get you the result quicker, faster, easier. And it's a lateral route.
And is this is the main aim of these lateral thinking exercises to just come up with different ideas? Because what we're talking about today, it's not just about ideas, it's also about leadership. So
Absolutely.
What's the link between the two?
Well, the leadership, the ideas are necessary, and you have to have lots of ideas, and you have to have good ideas. But then the leadership is all about turning those into action. And first of all, you've got to create an environment in which people are allowed to have ideas and allowed to voice heretical opinions, allowed to challenge, allowed to question the orthodoxy. And that's a cultural thing which the leader can either encourage or discourage. And we've seen many examples of leaders who discourage that kind of challenge in their thinking. And they just want to hear good news. And apparently Donald Trump's a bit like that. He just likes people who tell him good news. And he watches Fox News and he doesn't want to hear anything that challenges his views. But a really innovative leader welcomes unorthodox views. They welcome challenge. And what I say you should do is you should then employ rebellious, committed rebels, loyal rebels, people who want to see the organization do better, but are unhappy with the way it's doing things at the moment. So you want loyal rebels, and the leader can create an environment in which those people are recruited, encouraged, and then empowered to try things. And what the innovative leader does is he or she starts lots of fires under different people in different departments, and they're trying new things. And the innovative leader is constantly curious and constantly challenging. And one of the things I say is they have to be an arsonist and a firefighter. Mm-hmm. They're going around starting fires, and they're also going around putting out fires. Somebody says, well, we tried it didn't work. Customers didn't. He says, stop that. Oh, but it's really interesting. No, stop that. We'll try something else. And you see examples of this. People like Jeff Bezos in Amazon. It's always starting new fires. He's trying new things. And he tries incredible things. I mean, Kindle was an amazing idea for a company that had no experience in making hardware. And it worked. And the Amazon Fire, which was the phone, didn't work. But
a literal example of putting out a fire.
Yeah, a literal example of putting out a fire. Exactly. And he's constantly improving innovation, and at the same time, he's improving efficiency. So he straddles both sides of the fence.
I think that's an interesting point to touch on, and especially in the concept of like creating fires but putting them out. A lot of management seem to feel that their whole job is putting out fires, and so they might be comfortable with spotting problems and putting them out. But do you think there's a requirement to sometimes let these fires burn a little bit longer than people are comfortable with?
Sometimes, but firefighting is important. And when I was a CEO of a software company, I'd go in on a Monday morning and I was straight into firefighting mode. Somebody's resigned, customers made a complaint, project's behind schedule, and it's almost impossible to stop yourself wading in trying to fix problems because that's what you think you're good at. And it's essential. The problems have to be fixed. You can't ignore them. But at the same time, it means I wasn't concentrating on strategic things, which only the CEO can do, really. And what the leader has to do is delegate more of that stuff and focus and allocate time for strategic things, for whole new initiatives, for new partnerships, for new routes to market. And they can't take their eye off the ball, but they have to delegate some of that and step back sometimes. And it's a tough combination to master.
I mean, being a CEO is one of the toughest things because ultimately the company progress is your responsibility. And one thing you mentioned earlier touched a nerve with me in a good way. It's this concept of being courageous as well.
Yes.
So what do you mean by being a courageous leader?
By being a courageous leader, I mean making the tough decisions, the long-term decisions, the unpleasant decisions, which sometimes you have to make. And we constantly see people avoiding it. So if you look at the political leaders in the UK, they've avoided a decision on expanding Heathrow or Gatwick for decades because they're worried about the unpopularity. If you say we're going to build a new runway at Heathrow, a lot of people will be upset. You get a lot of short-term flack. And so they put it off. They have an inquiry. They use various delaying tactics. And they avoid the big decisions, the important decisions. But a courageous leader will take a tough decision And a courageous leader will admit that he or she has made a mistake when it turns out the decision they made was wrong, and they'll reverse it or do something different. And that takes courage because once again, if any leader says, well, I'm changing my policy, the media will say, well, that's a U-turn, it's a flip-flop, it's a sign of weakness. But in fact, to change your mind can be a sign of strength.
Why do you need courage to be innovative, though? Surely everyone will agree that trying out an innovation is a good thing, so it must be the easiest decision in the world.
You'd think so. You would think so. But it's not that way, because in every organization there are antibodies. There are forces which are inimical to innovation, and they're mainly the existing products. So if you're making an existing product and you're making it really well, and some guy's got a crazy idea for some cheap, nasty replacement, you're not the people who are in production, who are in sales, who are behind the current product line will oppose it. No telecoms company came up with Skype. We're using Skype now, but no telecoms company could conceive it because it was so revolutionary, because it would threaten their core business. Free voice calls over internet would be a real threat. So nobody dared try it. And it would have taken a really courageous leader in a telecoms company to have backed an idea like Skype.
So let's talk about some of these examples of courageous leaders, of lateral thinking leaders, because I think people love good case studies that they can sort of latch their teeth into. What's a good example of a recent example of a leader who's done the right thing and been innovative?
Well, there are many examples. They tend to be quiet people. I mean, Jeff Bezos probably is the most high-profile innovative leader who I think is a great example. But Bill Gates is another. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder and leader of IKEA, who drives around in an old Volvo, and he treats all his customers as all his workers as colleagues. And he's always had a very, very innovative approach to new products and new ideas and new store layouts, constantly trying new things, but not in a dictatorial way. He empowers people and he steps back. And it's that sort of thing which you see in great leaders. Anne Mulcahy, who took over as the CEO of Xerox back in 2002, I think it was. And she had a really difficult job on her hands. Xerox was a product company. She wanted to turn it into a services company. She did a very lateral thing. She printed up a fake document, fake news. It was a Wall Street Journal article dated 7 years in the future. And it talked about the turnaround at Xerox and how the company had moved from being a product company to doing all the document handling needs of its clients, and what a great job they were doing. And she gave a copy to every employee, and they understood what she wanted. They understood the direction that she was headed. And innovative leaders don't say, this is exactly how we're going to change the organization. What they say is, we're here today, we want to be somewhere different tomorrow. And they paint the vision of what they want, and then they say, you figure it out. I need smart people like you to tell me how we're going to get there. And they throw down a challenge, like Kennedy did with the moon landing. He said, before the decade is out, we'll send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth. He had no idea how they would do it. And she didn't know how they were going to do it with Xerox, but she set out the direction of travel, the destination, and she inspired people to try new things. And that's what innovative, courageous leaders do. They set a destination, they throw down a challenge, they empower people to try all sorts of crazy ways of getting there.
I think a lot of people in leadership positions quite often forget that. They don't necessarily need to have the answer of how a company is going to achieve their future goal, and they think that is their duty. But quite often, if the way of matching these targets and future visions isn't clear yet, then it's up to the entire team to figure it out, not just this one individual person.
That's right. And very often there are people close to the action who can see things that you can't. If you're at the top of the organization, you've got a view, you think you've got a very good view, but it's limited. And there are people lower down the organization who can see opportunities. And many of them are frustrated. They're not being listened to today. And what you need is a leader who's a good listener and open to new ideas. And that flies in the face of conventional leadership, which is all about being strong and determined and knowing what you want and having a strong plan and implementing the plan come hell or high water. And that may have worked in the past, but it's too inflexible today, I think.
So what can leaders do, or people who want to develop their leadership capabilities do, in order to become better leaders?
they can read my book. And this, yeah, it may sound trite, but there are a lot of good ideas in the book about how leaders can change their style, change the corporate culture, and use some of the methods and techniques of lateral thinking to challenge assumptions, to ask questions, to deliberately take a different point of view, even to use random inputs to conceive new possibilities.
So where can people go to find out more about you, the work that you do, and this book of yours?
Well, if you search for me, Paul Sloane, on YouTube or on the internet, you'll find it. It's Sloane. My website is destinationinnovation.com. And I've got lots of videos and lots of blog entries. I'm a prolific blogger, so I've got about 500 or 600 blogs that I tweet about, and some people really enjoy them.
Paul, I mean, we've talked before. It's always wonderful having you as a guest here. I really recommend everyone check out his new book. I'll have links down in the description for this video and the audio. And yeah, Paul, it's been wonderful having you here, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
It's been entirely my pleasure, Nick. Thank you very much.
Today's episode was made possible by members of our premium Deep Creativity Training Program. For less than the price of half a candy bar per day, you too can get world-exclusive daily exercises which push your creativity past its comfort barrier to make you better able to generate ideas in all aspects of your life and work. Invest in yourself now by going to www.ideatovalue.com/deepcreativity and using coupon code PODCAST for 25% off your first order. And don't forget that if you found this episode interesting, to like and share it, and to leave us a review in your favorite podcast player. See you again in the next episode.